Hi, I'm back for part 3 of our powder room cabinet makeover. And if you haven't seen how we got to this point, go back and watch from the beginning. So I'm ready to do some detail work, and I've already done one side just so I could see exactly what I wanted. So what I've done after I've painted, I've let it all dry, been a couple of days, and what I did was I put, you can see it's kind of shiny, I put 2 coats of satin clear coat on there. There you go, satin clear coat. And the reason I did that is because I'm going to put a glaze on here. And if I had not put the clear coat on there, it would have absorbed really quickly into the paint and left a blob where I probably couldn't have fixed it or moved it around to where I wanted it. So what the clear coat allows me to do is put on a glaze and then wipe it back without it absorbing into the paint, which is what I want. So let me show you what I've done. Now Dixie Belle has, and we have it at the shop, several different colors of the glaze. This is grunge. It was a little grayer than I wanted. It's a gray brown kind of color. I wanted something darker, and of course I left my black glaze at the shop. I didn't feel like going all the way over there to get it, but I made my own glaze. You can do that. I don't know if I've ever talked to you about that before, but you can take the satin clear coat and any color or combination of colors of the paint and make your own glaze. So I've got a giant mess right here in my plate, but I just kind of wanted to show you what I did. I put a little bit of the grunge glaze, which is the grayish color, the color coffee bean paint, the color caviar, and this is the clear coat satin. And basically what I'm doing is, find my little brush here, I'm taking my brush, and you can mix it all up if you want to begin with. I'm just doing a small section for my detail work, so I don't need a whole bunch. So I'm just taking equal amounts pretty much, and it's not a really, scientific matter. It's getting a little dry out. I probably need to give it a little spritz of water here just to make sure it doesn't dry out on me. But I'm just taking kind of equal parts and kind of mixing it up to the color that I want, which is pretty much, I wanted a darker color. As you remember, my new knobs, my new hardware is a black, so I didn't really want gray. I really kind of wanted more of a darker glaze. So that's what I'm doing. And I've got this little teeny artist brush here. And what I'm doing is I'm going right in these areas here, and I'll move you up closer if I can in just a moment. I've already done this door and this side, but if you know anything about me, when I do things like this, I can't leave things plain. And I don't know for sure if you can see the difference. Let me see what we got here. I can scooch it without dropping the camera and getting in the light. There is, you see the dark detail in the corner there? I've got to hold the camera, but right in the corner there versus here, there's no detail work yet. So we're going for the look on this side, and I'll show you how to get there. I don't want a whole lot of glaze on here. As you can see, there's there's a lot of blob on there, but right on the very tip, I'm looking for that chiseled sharp point. And my goal is just to make it look, to bring out the detail in the edges here. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take, and I like to start on the inside first, and I'm just going to take and just use my finger here, my pinky, as a guide. And it looks like a really big blobby mess right now. The other thing you're going to want to have on hand before you start this is either a baby wipe, or I like to use fairly damp paper towels. I'm going to try to go all the way down. You may not be able to see that, but I like to do the whole section. And then I'm going to leave it for just a second. And I'm just going to wipe it back with my paper towel until I get it where I want it. See, it's still a little bit too dark. I'm just going to keep wiping until I get it where I want it. I got a little too dark in some places. And I just kind of want to give the shadow effect just to bring out the details. There we go. And the other beautiful thing is if I get this all over the rest of my cabinet here, because the clear coat's on here, it wipes off almost like I can erase it. What you do want to do is just keep moving your rag around to a clean spot. You don't want to keep putting that back up on your cabinet there. And just like that, get it in there. It's just ever so slightly, I might need to put a little bit more right here, but ever so slightly a detail. And so I've got a little bit darker up here than I want. And the good thing about the glaze is it stays wet a little bit longer, especially if you use it, make your own with the satin clear coat. It actually stays wet a little bit longer than it would if it were just paint. So there we go. And just a hint, and if I don't like that, I might put a little bit in there. Like I said, you can use a baby wipe too. I like to use paper towels because I don't have to worry about any kind of residue that a baby wipe might leave. A lot of people use baby wipes. Oh, before I forget, I did put 2 coats of clear coat on here just to make sure I got the whole area. All right, so the next thing I would do is get some more of my homemade glaze here. Come on a little bit more on the black side, not so much on the brown side. The beauty of it too, if you make your own, you kind of mix your own color to the color that you like. And then I'm going to go, and if you can see this little section right here, I should figure out a way to move you a little bit closer. I'm going to go right here. I'm going to use my pinky again. There's a lot of detail in these cabinets. There's like little bevels and things right in here, so that you can follow the line here very easily. And I'm not putting hardly any pressure on my brush, just letting it flow off of the edge. Because it's down here, I might have to stand on my head to do this. A little bit more on my brush here. It looks like a really hot mess right now, but it'll be where I can wipe it off just because I've used the clear coat satin as a barrier between the paint and the glaze. All right, I'm gonna take my paper towel. Looks terribly messy right now, but I'm gonna just go just like that, and it leaves it in the crevices, which is what I want. And that's what a glaze will do for you. It brings out the details by leaving the color down in the crevices. Let me see if I can get you over here so you can see what it looks like. Maybe right there. If I can hold it still enough for you to see. As you can see, maybe it's like right in here versus over here, where there is no glaze in the details. And basically that is all there is to it. And what I'd also do is go up here under this area here. Oops. And of course I would go and do the whole thing, and I will once I get off camera, but I would go up under here, take my glasses so I can see. And again, I would just go under here. The very, very chiseled edge of my brush. Sometimes I'll let it sit for just a second to kind of set up so it doesn't all wipe off when I wipe it back. I'm going to use a clean, wet paper towel or damp paper towel. It's not just damp. It's fairly wet. It's not soppy wet, but it's fairly wet. So then I'm going to wipe back as much as I want, and it's beautiful. See, I wiped off too much, but that's the beauty of it. I can go back and put some more back on if I so desire. There we go. And I'm just kind of trying to make it stand out a little bit. I'm just trying to accentuate all of these details. They get kind of lost in the paint. Oops, just painted myself here. They get kind of lost in the details. The details get lost in the paint, and then you take the glaze and you bring them out, and it makes it just more interesting, gives it a little more depth, and those details that are beautiful in the wood itself actually pop. If you don't like what you've done, not a problem. Dixie Belle paint is all water-based, so you can just take your paint color and go back over the edges where you've glazed and let it dry, put some clear coat on it. And you don't have to do this step. This is just something I like to do because, well, I just can't leave things flat. I just like to see the detail in furniture, especially when it's built like this. It's made for the detail to show up. So I really like to make it pop. You could actually go along the edge on this side of the detail too. You could even, and I even actually, I'll show you. I even, oops, got a little carried away on that one. I even take on the very top of this little ridge right here, you can see it right here, and I also do that just to make it pop. Some people do the outside ridges of that. I just tend to like to do the inside. I will tell you the grain is this is different than here because the way it's built, so it may pick it up a little bit more. And this one's going to take a little bit of work because of the grain, because of the angle, and now I've got it too wet. But just use your pinky finger as a, see how messy that is right there? Not a problem. Because I have the clear coat on there, it'll just wipe back. Okay, so now it's time to put our finishing touches on our cabinet. What I've done, let me tell you what I did first though. My details were a little too dark for my husband, so let me tell you how I fixed that. I took satin clear coat, the paint color, and a little bit of water, put them in my tray. And I'm talking, basically, actually I just used the lid. When I shook it up, there was some in the lid. And then I took a sponge, and there was no real mixture, no real recipe for that. I just kind of, put it in here, put it in this clear coat, run it around, and then I went over the detail areas that had gotten too dark. And what that did, if you can see, it kind of just did kind of a wash, kind of toned it down some and pushed it back a little bit. I don't know how to explain that exactly right, but I pushed it back. So I let that dry. Actually, I took the hairdryer and put on it. And so now I'm ready to finish the whole thing. I'm so excited. So what I did was, I decided to use Gator hide because Gator hide is our most durable water repellent top coat that Dixie Belle has. A lot of people shy away from it, but I'm going to tell you some tips that I learned from one of the Dixie Belle brand ambassadors, Amy from AJ's Vintage Design. She has some great tips on how to work with Gator hide. So here's what I've learned. First of all, where did I go with it? If you're not doing details, do this step anyways. Because I did the details, remember I put the satin clear coat on it first so that I could make the glaze move the way I wanted it to. So that's great because it saved me a step because I was already doing that. But if you're not going to do the details, do this step anyway. Put another clear coat on there. It doesn't matter flat or, I like satin, I like satin. What that does is the Gator hide dries so quickly, it absorbs into the paint, sort of like I described the glaze are doing. It absorbs because the paint's so absorbed. What you really want to do is put the satin clear coat first. We'll let it dry completely. Put a fan on it, put a hairdryer on it, just make sure it's dry completely. And then you're ready for your Gator hide. Now, if you've already put the satin clear coat on and did your details, you don't have to put another satin clear coat on it. You're good. All right. So then what I do is I take some kind of a container. This is my little barbecue, I don't know, barbecue tub or whatever you want to call it. And what I found is if you heat up your Gator hide, it works a lot better. It's thinner and it works better. Don't know how to explain that. It just does. Tip that I forgot to tell you is always stir your top coats. Don't shake them because what will happen is it'll introduce air bubbles into the product, which will transfer onto your finish. You don't want that. So stir it. Don't stir hard. Just kind of stir it gently. I use a spoon. And then what I do is I put hot tap water in here. And I'm not going to do it because it's not quite ready for this yet, but you put hot tap water in here, just a little bit. Set your Gator hide in there, and then stir it, and you'll leave it for a little while. It doesn't take long, and then you'll see a consistency difference. But be sure that you stir your Gator hide from the bottom, and make sure you get all of it mixed up because it tends to settle, and that's where you get some of the problems too. So just make sure it's mixed really, really well. But the warm water or the hot water really helps. And then what I do is I take it out. And I'm talking
just a little bit. I mean, I had way too much in this. I've already done one coat, but it's not ready for the second coat yet. But I've already done one coat, and I had this just hardly any in it actually. And it was ready to go. All right. Now, how do I apply it? I apply it, this is my blue sponge that's been around a while. The Dixie Belle blue sponges are great. Now this is one after I've squished it about 1,000,000 times. But here's a trick if you want to keep the little blue specks out. Because if you run over a part of your wood that may not be very smooth, it'll start to pull the little blue stuff out. It'll disintegrate your sponge. It'll just catch and it'll do it. If you put like an old nylon over it, now this is because I've squished it 1,000,000 times, it's gotten small, but it's usually bigger. If you put a nylon over it and you go, do it like this. Here we go. And you can turn this nylon around and it'll last a long time. It'll get holes in it, but that's okay. Here we go. If you put an old nylon on it, I mean, it'll make it smooth to go over your, and the little blue specks won't come out. If you have Gator hide at home and you're dying to try this at home, and you have one of these dense sponges, you get it like I think Dollar Tree or something. Comes in a pack of 6 or something. They work as a substitute. I use these when I forget and leave my blue sponges at the shop. Just be sure that this part gets rinsed out really well because you don't want the little green speckles in your paint, in your finish. So, same process. You could put a nylon over this if you wanted to, but I find I don't have to, or you could just snip that off if you wanted to. Okay, so what you're going to do is, I use a damp sponge. I get it wet and I wring it out as much as I can. And I'm using this square one today because it's more of the shape of my project. Turn around here so you can see. So what you want to do, all right, so Gator hide will streak on you. As you can see that you might be able to see a few little streaks on my first coat here. I don't know if you can or not. I've tried to minimize them. What you do is you've poured your warmed up Gator hide in your plate. You take your sponge and you very gently dip it. And then you scrape almost all of it off. There's a big blob somewhere, you scrape it again, okay? Then what you're gonna do, and this is with pretty much any clear coat, do not overwork it. Particularly Gator hide, it dries super fast, and if you go back over it, you will be taking it off and causing more streaks. So what you would do is, I think I'll do it this way, go down, even pressure, leave it alone. Now make sure you don't have drips down here or up here because these will catch. What will happen then is the Gator hide, when it dries, it will look yellow. Not that it yellows, it just will look yellow because the product has pooled in a corner. Just make sure it doesn't pool in a corner. Now, you'll go back and get some more Gator hide if you need to. I'm talking very thin coats. And then you will go back slightly overlapping and do it again. And stop. Make sure you don't have any drips. And then you'll go back again and do it again. Okay? And for long flat surfaces, that's the best way to do it. Just stop. It's going to probably look streaky when it dries. That's okay. You'll catch it on the second coat. Now for these pieces, I just go this way. This way. And then, and then you can kind of go in here and here, which will catch some of your drips. And like so. Okay, and then up here, same thing. I would go back to my Gator hide, and then I would do this. And then I really had to watch here because it's a small space. So I squished my sponge in there, which I should have taken the cabinet doors off, yes, but I decided not to. So I really was careful to make sure that I didn't have drips. I also forgot to tell you right here, I've taken the caulking out, and because we're going to recaulk that, it was all messed up anyways. So if you want to do that, I would say do the caulking out before you paint. Okay, and so then on this part, I would do the inside too, but then you would just, this is why I kind of like this, see it fits right almost in there. And the same thing. Now, what happens then? You let your Gator hide dry. You want to make sure you don't have any drips, so you can go back and if you have drips here or whatever, get the drips out with the corner of your sponge, but just make sure you don't have pooling somewhere if you've gotten too much product. Let it dry completely. Okay? Then what you're going to do if you let it dry completely, I put a fan on mine and let it go for a couple, 3 hours, okay? If it's super humid, wait a little bit longer. So what I'm gonna do the second time is I'm gonna heat my Gator hide up again in my container here, stir it up again, pour it in my plate, do the same thing. Now this time I'm gonna come up from this way and I'm gonna go this way. And then I'm gonna go this way. You know, I'm gonna go back, just like I showed you, but you're gonna go back the opposite direction, which should catch all of the places where it may have drug and didn't get even coverage. Okay? So, I'm gonna do the same process on coat number 2, but I'm gonna go in the opposite direction. So if I went this way, I'm gonna go this way and this way. Then I'm gonna go this way. Okay? So, I'm gonna let that dry because I like to do 3 coats, and I think that's a recommendation for good water repellency is 3 thin coats. So I'm gonna do 3 thin coats. I'm gonna let that dry, and I'm gonna come back, and then I'm gonna go back the 3rd time, same thing, heat up my Gator hide, pour it in the thing, do like this, and I'm gonna go the original direction. Okay, and when I get down here, I'm gonna maybe flick it so I don't get the drips, but if I do, I'm just gonna do like this. But I'm gonna do like this and do like this. And like I said, it's not quite ready for me to do the second coat, but I wanted to come on and show you the best tips that I know from different people. Another retailer gave me this idea, so that was very helpful. I found every time I've used Gator hide warm like that, it's spot on. It works really good. So what happens if you get streaks after your Gator hide dries? Okay, I've got a tip for that too. Another one from Amy from AJ's Vintage Designs. If you don't follow her, go follow her. She's got some great tips anyway. Take very, very fine steel wool and kind of buff it out. The other thing is you could actually do a light sanding in between coats, but I just don't find that I do that. But you can if you want to. But if you find at the very end that it streaks on you, try buffing it out with very, very fine steel wool, like what is it, 4 zeros, 000, 40, whatever the finest is, and it'll help that as well. It'll also be smooth. So that's another tip you can do if you find that it does streak, if you've gotten too much product on there and it doesn't look like you want it to. So I hope that helps. Stay tuned for the finished project.